Welcome back, you freedom fighters. This is another fire-breathing, truth-telling, cat-scratching episode of the Conservative Cat Show, where we claw through the lies and we expose corruption and we defend God, family, and our beloved country. I'm your host, Conservative Cat, and today we are peeling back the curtain on one of the most powerful idols of America, and that is the vaccine industrial complex. So for decades, Big Pharma has worshipped at the altar of profit. They've protected bureaucrats, and they have rubber stamped science. And we are going to unpack this because RFK Jr. just nuked the vaccine cartel. Very excited about it. And Pritzker's third term. Yes, he was going for a third term. He is protecting his power, not the people. If he truly wanted to benefit the people of Illinois, he would not be running in a third term. There hasn't been I will say, serious contender. There's a couple of people who have announced their candidacies, and both of them I would not vote for. I would probably abstain before I voted for those Republican candidates. I am hoping and praying that Darren LaHood, the congressman, enters the governor's race. He didn't rule it out, Darren LaHood, and like I said, I am not pro everything that Darren LaHood has done. He voted for Ukraine spending a couple of times, but definitely think he'd be capable of defeating Governor J.B. Pritzker. I don't think any of the contenders right now in the governor's race are capable of defeating Governor J.B. Pritzker. Sorry. I just don't see it. So I'm hoping that Darren LaHood or a serious contender will enter the race. I do want to talk about Illinois gas taxes rising again. That is robbery, highway robbery. Illinois gas taxes, they are rising. You have 20 Republicans to thank for that, and 3 Senate Republicans, 20 House Republicans, 3 Senate Republicans, one of them being the Bloomington Mayor, Dan Brady, when he was a state representative. He voted for that in 2019. So let's get into Big Pharma and how the winds are changing. Okay, so who's leading the charge? None other than the Human Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yes, RFK Jr., the man that they've mocked, the man that they fear, and now he is shaking up the very foundations of the medical deep state. And this week, RFK Jr. did what no other government health official has ever dared to do in decades. So nobody's ever done this. He fired all 17 members of the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. All 17 members he fired. The vaccine priesthood, if you will, these 17 members, and he replaced them with a brand new panel, and at least half of them have expressed skepticism of vaccines. Oh, so not all pro-vaccine people on this member. You have some dissenters, which is good. This is why we have a two-party system here in America. It's good to have people who disagree with you, but it's also good to have people who agree with you on this panel, and they can debate each other. Okay, so genius. Not all 17 rubber stamping the science. He's not protecting these bureaucrats who have rubber stamped the science. We're going to have some actual debate on this board. It's the CDC Advisory Committee. So to the Big Pharma faithful, this is, of course, heresy. How could you, RFK Jr.? How dare you fire those people? To us, we call this oversight. We call this accountability. We call this actually running a department effectively. You want to have some dissenters and some people who don't agree with vaccines on this advisory council or committee on immunization practices. You want some people who, you don't want just vaccine, rubber stampers and all pro-vaccine. You want some debate. So this is called science, not scientism. This is not a religion. They are actually going to get to the science. So let me ask you, why should we be forced to trust the same people for decades, by the way, who have pushed something called thimerosal. For decades, these people on this committee have pushed thimerosal containing vaccines. I'm going to get to what thimerosal is. And, parents have raised concerns about this for decades now. Thimerosal. Because if you just do a simple Google search on what thimerosal is, you would not want to be giving it to your child. And of course, parents are going to raise concerns. Why would anybody follow blindly and obey these experts who say, don't question us, we are the science? Nobody wants to follow these people anymore. Why would you trust these people when they keep putting thimerosal in your vaccines and they keep saying that it's safe? It's not safe. Why would you just trust these people who had an experimental vaccine and forced you to take it? Otherwise, you'd get fired from your job. This isn't medicine at this point. It's a cult. So RFK Jr. is shaking things up quite a bit by firing all those 17 members. Fired them all. Okay, and he replaced them. So at the heart of this controversy is thimerosal. This is a mercury-based preventative or preservative, and they put it in vaccines, preservatives. And RFK Jr. has warned about this for years. Parents have been concerned about this for decades. And the CDC keeps insisting that, hey, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. It's just a preservative. And there's been dozens of studies that they have released that say that there's no link to autism when it comes to thimerosal. But here's the thing. They removed it from childhood vaccines in 2001. Mostly they removed it. So if it was so safe, why would they remove it from childhood vaccines in 2001? They say it's gone, but it turns out flu shots still have this. So RFK Jr.'s and his new board, his new committee, they are attempting to shut down the flu vaccines like as a recommended vaccine. So right now, it's a recommended vaccine by the CDC. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, they are going to try to take flu shots off of the recommendations list because there is some amount of this thimerosal in these flu shots, and we're giving it to kids. So when RFK Jr.'s new panel revisited those flu shots and revisited the recommendations, all hell broke loose in the medical establishment, as you could imagine. Why? Because someone dared to question the sacrament of vaccination, and they're calling it dangerous that RFK Jr. is saying, well, I don't think the CDC is going to recommend flu shots, especially for children, because it's got some of the thimerosal in it, which is mercury-based, and it's not good. It's a mercury-based preservative. It's dangerous. They're calling it science. It's actually anti-science, and what they're really saying is, how dare you threaten our control? That's what they're really saying when RFK's new panel, says, hey, we want to remove this from the recommended vaccinations list. They're saying it's anti-science. It's dangerous. How could you do this? What they're really saying is, we're upset that you are asking questions and you're threatening our control. That's really what they're saying. So listen to this. After the panel was reshaped, he fired all the 17 members and it was reshaped. Vaccine policy advisors started to drop like flies. Okay, one after another, they all started to resign. So these are, CDC staff, pediatric experts. These are the bureaucrats within the CDC. They all started to drop like flies, one after another. Boom, 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 all resigning. Okay, so these are bureaucrats who have been sitting in their roles for decades. So what's going on here? I'll tell you what's going on. They've never had to answer a question. And they don't like it that somebody's asking questions and they can't take the heat and they can't answer these questions. So one expert said, this meeting has been devastating to watch. One of these CDC experts. Devastating? You mean democracy, actual debate happening, people who have a dissenting view of vaccinations. There's actual debate happening. You mean democracy is devastating? Is that what you mean? You mean letting people who aren't bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies have a seat at the table? That's what's devastating, isn't it? So maybe what's so devastating is the $30 billion vaccine market is being threatened by a few voices, RFK Jr. and the few people half of the people on the now vaccine committee for immunizations practices. Okay, so it's just a handful of people who are really shaking things up, and people are starting to resign over there. They're threatened by a few voices of common sense. So let's take a moment here and look at it biblically, because that's what I like to do. In Ephesians 5, verse 11, the Apostle Paul writes, "Have nothing to do with fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." RFK Jr. may not get everything right, but when it comes to vaccine safety, he is turning the tables in the temple of Big Pharma, just like Jesus flipped the tables in the temple after the money changers turned faith into profit. RFK Jr. is doing the same thing in the CDC. A government agency has become a storefront for Pfizer, for Moderna, and Big Pharma. So let's not forget, we are made in the image of God. We are not lab rats. Our children are not test subjects. And God gave us immune systems, and he gave us wisdom and discernment, not government mandates and liability shields for injections. Okay. So we have the wisdom, we have the immune systems, but also we need to call out these liability shielded injections, these vaccinations. If there's injuries, all of these companies, and RFK Jr. is changing that, all these companies are shielded from any kind of liability. So say this Thimerosal, which was in a flu shot, and it's mercury based, and you give it to your child, and then the child winds up with some sort of ailment or injury. The people who gave them the flu shot, the people who make it with the Thimerosal, despite us taking it out of the 2001 childhood vaccines, because most likely it's not safe. They swear it's safe. It's not. If we take it out of the 2001 vaccines, you'd think that they took it out for a reason, right? But those vaccination companies, the people who create those vaccines, are shielded from any sort of liability when it comes to vaccine injury. So I want to talk about Lynn Redwood. She is the former leader of the Children's Health Defense, and she spoke at the panel meeting, and they had a meeting, and she made a very simple claim. Thimerosal, this is toxic. And what happened? What happened after that? I'll tell you what happened. The media went nuts. They went crazy. The New York Times, CNN, every legacy mouthpiece accused her of misinformation. Why? Because she said mercury shouldn't be injected into children. CDC staff, they have actually posted a scientific review defending Thimerosal, and then they removed it. Now ask yourself why they would remove a study or a scientific review that defends Thimerosal. They removed and deleted their own study. This isn't about public health. This is about narrative control. It's 1984 with the syringe. Folks, here's the hard truth. America's vaccine advisory system is broken. They'll advise you to take every single vaccine. You should see the list of vaccines babies are supposed to get. And it's built on a revolving door, drug companies funding, and a complete lack of transparency, really. So it's just drug companies funding this, and CDC is essentially a storefront for these drug companies. And it's so refreshing, and it's rare. I mean, come on. It's very rare to see someone tear it all down. RFK Jr. is tearing it all down to the studs, and of course, he's facing backlash for that. The corporate media is in full meltdown mode over this, over him firing everybody on the CDC advisory board for immunization practices. They're melting down, and for the first time in a generation, parents, citizens, and medical professionals, they're not just going to say, shut up, take the jab. We're going to have medical professionals on an advisory board who have a seat at the table, and they're not going to say, shut up, take the jab. They're going to actually have healthy debate, and they're going to debate things like Thimerosal being in our vaccines, and they're going to ask the questions of, hey, is mercury really safe to be injecting in our children? And that scares the elite than any virus. Okay, this is really freaking out the elite that there are actual adults at the table who are willing to question things like thimerosal. So, what does all this mean for you? This means informed consent is coming back and it's making a comeback. So, you're going to know what's in your flu shot. You're not just going to go in and get your flu shot and it's going to have thimerosal in it and it's going to be dangerous for children. It's not going to be like that. You're going to know everything that's in these shots, and whatever shots they wind up recommending, this advisory committee, you can have the peace of mind knowing that this was debated by professionals and by dissenters, people who are critical of vaccines, and they just don't rubber stamp the science. So informed consent is making a comeback. Parental rights back in the driver's seat. Parents get a say over what kind of vaccines their kids are supposed to have, or what kind of vaccines they give their children, and they won't be guilted into providing or giving them a whole CVS receipt long list of vaccinations. And this means maybe, just maybe, the government is going to stop treating our children like they're public property. And it means you, the listener, the mom, the dad, the pastor, the small town doctor, you matter again. Patient-doctor relationship matters again. And we are reclaiming what it means to be free. It means to ask questions. Being free means asking questions. That's really all it means. It means you can say no to a vaccine after you've informed yourself, and you won't be called a conspiracy theorist. So this isn't about being anti-vaccine. It's about pro-truth and pro-transparency and pro-liberty and pro-debate. So look, folks, the same people who locked down your churches, masked your toddlers up for no reason, pushed experimental shots with no liability, COVID-19, that was a total coronavirus, a total experimental shot, and they're not held liable for injuries that we are starting to see. Myocarditis in young men, blood clotting. Autopsies have showed people are dying of blood clots because of the vaccinations. And now people are panicking in the CDC, the CDC bureaucrats, because somebody they came out and said, hey, let's slow down. That's all they're saying is, let's slow down. Let's take a look at a few of these things. Let's stop recommending flu shots for kids if that flu shot contains things like mercury in it. Okay, so RFK Jr. is shaking it up, and this is proof that there is a pulse. The truth still has a pulse in Washington, D.C., and I'm here to amplify it for you. I'm here to amplify that pulse, make it loud and clear. President Donald Trump, actually, I want to get to this. He canceled $1 billion that was set to go to Gavi, Gavi. This is Bill Gates. It's the Gavi Vaccine Alliance. So what is that? This is a public-private, so it's partially funded by taxpayer dollars and partially funded by donations, one of those nonprofit type things that Bill Gates has. And really what this is, they try to go out and they try to immunize children in poor countries. Okay, but really what this is they're shoving these shots in these kids' arms like it's candy, so that way these pharmaceutical companies that create those vaccines get all kinds of money, right? So what happened here with President Donald Trump's administration, he canceled a lot of this through the USAID. I'm sure it was through that he canceled $1 billion to Bill Gates, his vaccine alliance thing. So I think that we should arrest Bill Gates for treason. You're going to agree with me. Biological war crimes, colluding with the CCP. Let's take a listen to what RFK Jr. has to say about it. He talked about how Bill Gates is controlled by the WHO, who mandates vaccines for the entire world. And really, it's because these pharmaceutical companies are getting rich and they're kicking back to the elitists in the CCP. Take a listen to this.
I know most about Gates, because I've written a book about him, and that what he calls philanthrocapitalism, which is you use philanthropy to make yourself rich. and you use it strategically, and that's what he's done again and again. He's gotten control of the World Health Organization so that they mandate vaccines all over the world, and the companies that make those vaccines are Gates is, in many of them, the major shareholder. And he did the same thing with the Green Revolution. He got a hold of the regulatory agencies in African countries and forced them to change the nature of agriculture. There's 20,000 generations of agriculture of people growing crops like sorghum and plantains and yucca and all these plants for subsistence. And he said, no, we're going to transfer them all to these, GMO monocultures of corn, and then we're going to bring in companies that he owns, Kraft, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, these big food companies, processing companies, to buy that, and that's going to be the deal. And then, of course, during COVID, all of that shut down, and you had, there's 30 million Africans now as a direct result of Gates's policy who are now on the edge of starvation.
Tell that story that you shared with me a couple of years ago about the vaccines that Gates sent over supposedly for women that, I don't know, was to control birth control or what?
That's another, I think the real tell was what happened with the DTP vaccine, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Because of Gates pushing this shot, it's now the #1 vaccine in the world, DTP. And it's mainly given in Africa. It was that particular shot is discontinued in the United States because it was killing or badly injuring 1 out of every 300 kids who took it. We ended it in Europe and the United States, but Gates is giving it to every kid in Africa. And in 2017, he asked the Danish government for money to support this program, and it said, we've saved 20 million kids. The Danish government said, can you show us the data? He couldn't. So the Danish government went and did its own study, and they had records of 30 years of this vaccine in a country called Guinea-Bissau. And they looked at the records, and what they realized in retrospect, which they were never seeing, is that the girls who were getting that vaccine at 6 months of age were 10 times more likely to die over the next 6 months as children who didn't get it. Wow. And they were dying of things that nobody on the ground had ever associated with vaccination. They were dying of anemia and bilharzia and malaria and dysentery and nobody had made the connection that it's only the girls who got the vaccine who were dying of those things, that the other kids were much healthier. And the Danish government had retained the greatest vaccine scientists. All of them were pro-vaccine. A guy called Peter Aaby, who's like a deity in that space, and another guy called Sigrid Morgensen, and a whole team of scientists knew that. And those scientists started speaking up and saying, you got to discontinue this vaccine. And Gates made sure their careers were destroyed. So that's when I understood that he actually understands what he's doing. And, this is not just him being hypnotized. He knows that this is wrong because this science was indisputable. And it really made me wonder about what his motivations are.
All right. Well, that was RFK Jr. And we were talking about Gavi. So this is one of those nonprofits that was getting government dollars, right? President Donald Trump just canceled $1 billion to the Gates Gavi Vaccine Alliance. And right there, RFK Jr. was telling you about how Bill Gates is controlled by and controls the WHO. I would say he controls the WHO, which mandates vaccines for the entire world. And Bill Gates, I think, definitely should be looked at for treason, biological war crimes. I mean, these kids in Africa, we don't even give that DTP. We don't give that vaccine to our kids here, but he was out giving it to poor children in these countries. And these kids were dying from the vaccine. So I think biological war crimes, yeah, he should be looked into that. I do want to also talk about, really quick, RFK Jr. Broke down some shocking science, and it shows how food directly impacts our behavior. So prison violence, there's a report out there that prison violence, suicide, and restraint use in prisons plummeted when the inmates were actually fed real food. And I want to talk about this, but real quick, let's get to RFK Jr. talking about this report. Here we go.
Yesterday in Washington, D.C., I talked to the corrections officials, including some from Oklahoma, from all over the country. And before I went in there to give that talk, I looked at some of the data, some of the studies, and there were over a dozen studies that I found very quickly on Google that showed what happens when you change prison food. And there are studies that show that violence goes down by 38%, that assaults go down by 85%, that suicides in one juvenile facility went down 100%, the use of restraints goes down 75%. Well, when we start feeding, this food is poisoning not only our health, but our mental health as well. And, we need to start giving better food to our children in our schools and give them a chance.
So he said there, I know it was a little quiet. I should have boosted those levels for you this morning. But yesterday in Washington, D.C., he says, I talked to correctional officers from all over the country. And then he says, and I have looked at dozens of studies, and it shows you what happens when you change the food in prison. Violence goes down by 38%, assaults go down by 85%, suicides in one juvenile facility went down by 100% when they switched the food to real food. And what do I mean by that? Well, he says we're poisoning our health, our physical health with this food, but we're also destroying our mental health. He also said the use of restraints in prison went down by 75%. This is huge stuff. Now, I want to get to this. This is Bloomington, District 87, Unit 5. This is in the heart of Illinois, central Illinois. And they're touting how they give free breakfast and lunch to children all summer long. Take a listen to this.
How often do you get the free lunches?
In the summer, we've been coming almost about every day.
So we participate in the summer food service program. So with that program, we can offer free meals to any child 18 years old and under. And then adults can get meals, but they have to pay a fee.
We always have a hot lunch option, and then we also have more cold lunch option, such as soy butter sandwiches, or sometimes we'll do some fun creative nacho kits that are cold, or pizza kit options.
For our summer menu, we usually pick the kids' favorites: pizza, chicken nuggets. We have an orange chicken meal that's pretty popular. What do you have today?
Tacos.
Do you like tacos?
Yeah, they're really good.
What's your favorite food?
I would probably have to say the tacos. They're so really good. Yeah. I think it's really nice. And I like that they if you don't like the food, you're able to get something like the peanut butter jelly sandwich.
My passion is actually just about providing healthy options for students. So I really enjoy doing this program.
I'm proud that District 87 provides this program and that we provide it at so many sites. So we're able to reach more children so that more children don't go hungry over the summer.
Okay, out of all of that, I don't know about you, but out of all of that, I saw just one food item that was real food, real actual food. One, that was the strawberries. And I thought it was interesting. I just am so happy that we're providing kids with healthy options. She mentioned that same woman, she's the food nutrition specialist or whatever at Unit 5, probably gets paid a ton of money. She mentioned soy butter sandwiches. Soy is the most dangerous thing you could be feeding your child, and here's why. There's a chemical process that happens to melt down soy. So what winds up going on, they crush up all of the soy, okay? And it goes to a food processing plant. They crush it up, and then they soak it in hexane. Hexane is a degreaser. Typically, it used to be used before we started this crazy food processing. It used to be used to clean up oil spills at oil refineries. Okay, it's a degreaser for the floor, and it's a powerful degreaser to clean up oil. So what they do is they crush up all the soy, and then they soak it in something called hexane. And hexane is a very, very flammable, dangerous chemical, not something you would like to ingest. They say that they process all of the hexane out of it, which is a total lie. It's bunk. When people say that, it's impossible to do that. But what the hexane does, they soak the crushed up soy and it removes the oils and brings the oils up to the top. And then they skim the oil. They put it in another processing system, and then they clean that oil of hexane. RFK Jr. has talked about getting rid of hexane. That would really change up food here in America. But it's really concerning when you have like a food nutrition specialist at Unit 5 talking about soy butter and soy butter sandwiches. And she says, I'm just so glad that we can provide the kids healthy options. The little girl, she says tacos. Yeah. And I'm sure these are not real ingredients. I saw the cheese that they're using. It's like the canned nacho cheese. Could you imagine how much poison is in that? Probably 40, no, not red dye 40, the yellow dyes to make it that yellow. Okay. When you actually make nacho cheese from real cheese and you do your own processing, it does not look that yellow. Unless you add something natural like turmeric is what I use for my nacho cheese. I make my own cheese sometimes. It's very tough to do. Like, not tough. I mean, it just takes time. And once you start making your own food, you start to realize, wait a second, all of this stuff, all of these ingredients, and I want to get to, she had mentioned, when I don't eat the tacos, I like the peanut butter jelly sandwiches, little girl. And she talked about the peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and the camera shows you the Uncrustables. Okay. So they're touting that they're providing these children this, healthy options. Let's take a look at the ingredients list of Uncrustables. Okay. The peanut butter jelly sandwich. Okay. These I've circled for you. These are the real ingredients, something that you would use to make something like this. Now, I would argue you don't have to use soybean oil. Okay, you can use something like an olive oil or something like that. And I don't even know why. If peanut butter is very easy to make. You put peanuts in a blender and then you blend it. That's it. And you can add some salt to it. That's it. And then jam is pretty easy to make as well. Sugar, you can use molasses, strawberries, things like that. Here they are using, obviously, corn syrup. They use yeast. That's something you need for the bread. But these are all the ingredients that you would need to make something like an Uncrustable. Arguably, I wouldn't use some of these ingredients, but then look at all the other ingredients that are left. Phosphate, calcium sulfate, ammonia sulfate. This is diglycerides. It goes on and on and on. They are feeding the kids crap, and they're like, we're so glad that we give the kids this program. We are just so glad we can provide them a healthy option. Like, please, let's start giving our children food without glyphosate, food without heavy metals and toxins. This is metals. That's what half of this is just metals. And let's stop giving them this in our public schools, in our daycares, even in our private schools. We should stop giving them this crap. You know how easy it is to make a homemade peanut butter jelly sandwich from scratch. It takes a little bit of time, probably about 15 minutes. The jam is a little bit harder. You'd probably have to do a couple of days. It's a process. But it's easy. It's easy to do single ingredient PB&Js, but they give the kids Smuckers, Uncrustables, and then they sit there, and I wouldn't be upset, but this woman is sitting here saying that this is a healthy option for the kids. Number one, and nobody wants to say this out loud, but I'll say it, even though it's not politically correct. If the parents are unable to feed their children, in the summertime and they don't have money to put food in their children's mouths. I don't know about you, but we used to call that back in my day, child abuse. If you are unable to feed your children and they will go hungry without the use of tax dollars, DCFS should be called. And I know that sounds terrible, but if you cannot afford, and I am not, I know I sound absolutely heartless. I'm not totally against social programs. We shouldn't be feeding the kids toxins in these social programs. We should actually be providing them healthy food. Because as RFK Jr. said, this actually leads to violence. And District 87, they tout that they offer this teens to children and teens during the summer, these breakfast and lunch programs. Number one, if you aren't feeding your children 3 meals a day or, pretty darn close to 2 meals a day and giving them adequate nutrition, and you have to rely on somebody else to provide adequate nutrition to your children, for your children, then you likely should be looked at for child abuse. I know that's not politically correct, and I know, I sue me. But I'm sorry. It's just like, I don't get where, same thing, they're now going to be providing clinics and healthcare to children in public schools. They want to do that where they open up a clinic. If you're not giving your children the basic healthcare and providing them basic healthcare and taking them to the damn doctor when they have a fever, and you're sending them to school to these people for these people to look at them, and you're not able to take them to their physician, you shouldn't have been a parent too. And I get it, people fall on hard times, and that's what social programs are for. But if it's habitual, right, where they're coming to the summer program every year, they're coming every single day, this is somebody who is not serious about being a parent. And it matters what we feed them in these social programs as well. They're going to say, oh, I'm happy that we can give these children healthy options. There was one real food item I saw out of that entire video, and it was the damn strawberries. And most likely it was like, stay, like that's not probably on their menu every single day. So the food, obviously, as RFK Jr. said, has an effect on your mental health as well. And we know BHS, we know District 87, that there is all kinds of violence. In 2021, I'll never forget it. It was this brawl that happened, and it actually sent an officer, school resource officer, to the hospital. He was shown in a video trying to break up a fight, and Scott Day was the officer's name, and he was hospitalized. I mean, after this brawl that broke out at District 87 in 2021, and things like this happen all of the time in public schools, where the kids are bullying each other and hitting each other. And I can't help but feel it's probably due to programs like District 87 and Unit 5, breakfast and lunch programs where they're giving the kids actual crap. Heavy metals. I mean, look at this ingredients list one more time before I move on. Everything that's circled is real. Everything that's not circled is heavy metals, glyphosate, things like that. Not good for the kids. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about Governor J.B. Pritzker running for a third term, 2026. This is the Conservative Cat Show. Be sure to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. Good morning. Appreciate you being here. Unholy alliance, big food and big pharma. Yeah, we're just going to give them all the crappy food and all the processed food that has all these heavy chemicals and metals in them, and the process itself. Once you start making your own food, you'll realize pretty quickly how bad everything in the store is. And you just look at the ingredients list and you go, wait a second, when I make homemade peanut butter jelly sandwiches, I use like 3 ingredients tops. Like, you know what I mean? Outside of the bread, like the bread is 3 ingredients. It's water, flour, and yeast. And then the peanuts, that's 1 ingredient, so 4. And then the strawberries and sugar, and you can pretty much like ferment that and make it into a jam. You can add like molasses to it. So I would say a total of like 6 ingredients. that's about it. So cafeterias use food to make food now. It's a distribution center for chemical products. Cafeterias used to use food and make food. Now it's a distribution center for, yes, okay, I got it. Danny, thanks so much for commenting. Yeah, cafeteria, they used to use food. I don't know. When I was in school, so I graduated high school in 2017. When I was in school, we had all kinds of preservative crap, not a whole lot of healthy options. I always brought my school or brought home lunch from school unless they had like real food there. Now I will say this, they didn't give us the Uncrustables. They did make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like straight from peanut butter and straight from the jelly, and they used to make them. Now they just give the kids like packages of these products like the Uncrustables. Why? Because it's easier. Most likely what happened was in order to, they probably fire or lay off the cafeteria folks. And they prioritize programs like the DEI programs and these bureaucrats and administrators in the school system. And most likely, they don't keep cafeteria, like true cooks in the cafeterias in these schools anymore, and they don't pay them that well, similar to that of, I would say teachers are paid pretty well comparatively to the average Illinoisan salary, right? They're making pretty good money. They don't need to make any more money. But comparative to the teachers don't make anything compared to these administrators who facilitate these DEI programs. Okay, so the priorities are all out of whack. Here's who we should be paying the most. Cafeteria staff and cooks in the kitchen who are providing food to our children. Bottom line, they should be paid the most. They are providing nutrition to your children. Really, call me crazy. I don't even really, and it's just expensive, and it's just not a sustainable model. Parents should be sending and cooking and making food for their children and sending it home with them to school. If we're going to continue this public school crap, which I don't think we should. But really, is it so hard, to make your kids some real food and send them to school with real food? Let's not have the school replace your duties as a parent, which would be to provide proper nutrition. You've got a few things you got to do as a parent, which is to just make sure your kids are healthy and that they don't die, right? There's only a few things that you have to do as a parent. And if the school replaces all of those responsibilities, I mean, what the hell are you? You know what I mean? And I know that's politically incorrect or whatever, and it might rub people the wrong way, but I mean, you're sending your kids away for 8 hours a day. They're being watched and looked over and raised by these people at these public schools. The least you can do is make the kid a damn peanut butter sandwich from scratch, right? I mean, if they're going to be raising the children and teaching the children and rearing up your child for you, the least you could do as a parent is provide them healthy food at home and send them to school with that food. If we're not going to do that, I'd say hire full-blown cooks, people who are actually trained in cooking and have a passion for it. We should be hiring cafeteria staff that has a passion and that are paid well. We should pay the cooks, the people who are providing those children nutrition, daily nutrition. They should be paid the highest, and then the teachers, and then it's all backwards. Then your superintendents. Bottom line, I think it's all backwards. The DEI directors, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and your cafeteria staff is likely making $15 an hour minimum wage. So yeah. No. Hold on. Let me get to this comment. No, what's on the meals is prepackaged food warmed up and then served. Only real food is fruit. Veggies are canned. Rarely raw veggies. Yeah. So the only real food is fruit, and then even that is not great for kids. I'll say that fruit is a dessert and should be treated like the dessert it is. It's got a lot of sugar in it. Fruit is good. It's got a lot of vitamins. I'm not, saying that. But these kids, if they're having fruit every single day, probably it spikes their sugar in the middle of the day. You typically don't want that, in the middle of the day, because if it's around lunchtime, you want to have it like mid-morning, like 10 o'clock, and then it'll spike your sugar a little bit, and then it has time to come down. But spiking the kids' sugar in the middle of the day, it really can mess up your metabolism. So that's why fruit is typically like seen as a breakfast food, because it spikes your sugar, but you have time to get your sugar levels. It's sugar. That's what fruit is. And yeah, I disagree with feeding the kids fruit every single day to begin with. It's the only real food that I see in schools. Sometimes they'll have, a serving of fruit. They shouldn't be giving the kids fruit every single day. And like, this is just basic nutrition. And you would think that the food nutritionist at Unit 5 would know some of this. And, I think it's so interesting. Yeah, healthy food. They have a healthy food option. Then they show the strawberries. And it's like, that's the only food that wasn't like prepackaged garbage. Yeah, I've never seen raw veggies at a cafeteria in a school ever. Usually it's canned food. Canned veggies, which if you look on the back, like canned corn, come on now. We all know that that's not nutritious. Go look on the ingredients list. RFK would put real food stamp. Yeah, I think that we should just bring back real food into schools and prisons. And the science or the studies back this up. And we know that our kids have gotten more and more violent. They're definitely more violent from when I was in school. They've gotten more violent. I mean, I told you about the 2021 brawl where a school resource officer was hospitalized because of a fight that broke out. Fights break out all the time. Kids are bringing in guns and they're acting out. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the food. We know that there have been studies done in prisons where once you gave the prisoners real food, they started to act appropriately. There was less restraints used, less assaults, less suicides. In one juvenile detention center, the kids, they were given real food, and then the suicides were completely gone. Like no suicides, 100% of suicides, a drop in suicide. So, all right, let's get to Governor J.B. Pritzker. I love taking your chats. I'll take them here in the 7 o'clock hour at some time. But JB, he's running for a third term, 2026. That's right. More spending, more mandates, more political theater, and less common sense. Pritzker kicked off his campaign with a statewide tour of, your usual fire and brimstone sermon against Republicans, insurance companies, and of course, oddly enough, Donald J. Trump. And he said that he is running to protect our story. So he kicked off his campaign with a statewide tour, and he started giving his usual sermons. And he said that he wants to protect our story. I don't know what the hell that means exactly. Protect our story, Governor. The story of Illinois being the worst run state in the Midwest. People are fleeing in droves. The story of losing hundreds of thousands of residents to freer states like Florida, Indiana, Texas. If you know anybody in Florida, they are shoulder to shoulder. Like quite literally, if you talk to people who live there, they are shoulder to shoulder with people, and they can't like move. Like there's a traffic situation in Florida because everybody wants to go to the free state, in the state that is, where there's land, where there is the land of opportunity, and that's Florida, Texas, even Indiana. People are leaving Illinois to just go over the border to Indiana. So the story, I mean, I don't know what story he's protecting. The story of balancing budgets with federal COVID money and calling it reform. Give me a break, Governor J.B. Pritzker. He blasted lobbyists and big pharma, claiming he stands up for families. But families in Illinois are still paying the nation's highest gas taxes, which I'll get to here in just a second when it's going to go up again July 1st. skyrocketing utility bills and unaffordable groceries here in the state of Illinois because of all of the mandates that we've put on grocers, like the fact that they can't use plastic bags, which is just bizarro. So he provided a speech. He said that we have to protect our story. I don't know what story he's protecting. Okay. Pritzker says Illinois families can't take it anymore. He's right. But not for the reasons he thinks. Illinoisans, they are tired of the endless regulation. They are tired of the broken schools, the crumbling infrastructure, the DEI political circus that is shoved down their kids' throats when they go into the classroom or when you go into a public building. And the people are packing up, Illinoisans are packing up their U-Hauls and they're leaving because their government is actively working against them. So the Republican Governors Association hit the nail on the head. Pritzker's political ambition is a vanity project. This is quoted in the Center Square. I'll get to a clip here in just a second of Governor J.B. Pritzker and Kathy Salvi. Kathy Salvi reacted to Governor J.B. Pritzker running for a third term. It's a vanity project, says the Republican Governors Association, and working class Illinoisans are left holding the bag. Pritzker pandered to, of course, all the usual suspects in his speech, in his, fire and brimstone speeches that he's been given. He kicked off his campaign. Of course, he pandered to all of the usual suspects, the usual categories, urging supporters to stand up from the LGBTQ community, DEI, immigrants, Black and brown people. So here we go again. The governor's going to dust off the identity politics bingo card and read it like scripture, right? Like it's scripture. The LGBTQ identity politics, this is his scripture. This is his doctrine, and he's dusting that off, and he's going to use that to run. But I don't know where the love is for the taxpayer. Where's the love? Where's the defense of the unborn? Where's the defense of the overregulated farmer, the small businesswoman who can't get relief from Springfield's suffocating rules? What about those people, Governor? Are you going to represent those people, or are you just going to represent the subsidized poor in these nonprofit organizations who are given jobs, and then those nonprofit organizations are given grants, taxpayer money, and you're subsidizing the poor through these nonprofit organizations? And we don't need any more virtue signaling in this state. We need virtue. Okay, we need somebody who is going to treat all people equal under the law and not categorize us into color-coded voting blocks, okay, for political gain, because that's exactly what he's doing. They dust it off every single time they run for something. It's the identity politics bingo card, okay, and they use this. And it's for political gain, and they divide people and categorize people into colors and into sex orientation, and that is how they that is how they win. So let's talk about results. The Democrat Governors Association praised Pritzker for, quote, turning a fiscal disaster into a balanced budget. Here's the truth. Illinois is still one of the worst states for businesses. Okay, we have the highest property taxes in the country, and the state, he touts this all of the time, the 9 credit upgrades thanks to this massive flood of federal COVID relief. Okay, we had federal dollars, and it wasn't because of spending restraint that our credit rating went up, that we had 9 credit ratings. It was because of the federal dollars coming in. And Governor J.B. Pritzker has signed laws that have raised the state's gas taxes twice. Okay, so he signed it twice. He has allowed for bloated public pension spending. He has allowed that to continue. We are $140 billion in pension debt. Okay, and he's pushed radical abortion policies through the legislature, radical abortion policies that we pay for our tax dollar, or with our tax dollars. So this isn't leadership. Okay. This is, he was riding a wave of federal money. Okay. He was riding this temporary wave of federal money while setting people up for the next crash. Okay, so, and on top of that, he brags about reproductive freedom, which is just code word for abortion on demand. He's not about reproductive freedom. He's about late term, funded by your taxes abortion. And I want you to let that sink in if you're a Christian this morning. That is what Governor J.B. Pritzker is for. He doesn't defend the unborn. He defends the subsidized poor, these LGBTQ folks, black, brown folks who get suckered into working for these nonprofit organizations. And they get pennies, and the people at the top, they get these crazy salaries, like $100,000 to $200,000, six-figure salaries to sit around and like combat the problem of LGBTQ hate, says said nonprofit here. You've got your director, your executive director of that nonprofit, and then all of the little ants at the bottom who get the crumbs. And then you've got your top dog who's getting $200,000, and then the money goes, and they funnel that money into the nonprofit, the grants, via the grants. And they say, oh yeah, we're getting donations, but you don't really know how much of that is grant money, how much of it is donation money. And then they, take that grant money and then they pay their plebs who work for that nonprofit. In exchange, you have to vote these Democrats in, so that way the money keeps flowing in, because then they'll provide us grant money for us to keep our mission going, right? So that's what's going on. And then they turn around and then they funnel it right back into the coffers through their 501c4s. So they'll have a 501c3 that gets the tax dollars, but then you got the same people working. The executive director works as the treasurer for this 501c4. And then this person, makes a contribution to X cause. I mean, this is just, there are no actual people who aren't paid for. I mean, they pay for votes. Nobody would vote for Governor J.B. Pritzker if it wasn't for this whole entire racket. Okay, there's people, small business owners, there's overregulated farmers, people who want to stand for life and the unborn and defend the unborn. That is the majority in Illinois. But you're going up against a racket, a machine, a well-greased political machine that keeps these people in power. And it's really sad because the Democrat Party have manipulated and used these poor people who work in these nonprofits. And they are abusing these people because they'll give them pennies. In exchange, they have to pretty much sell their soul to the Democrat Party, and they can't dissent. Don't believe me, try being a black person and then voting for Donald Trump or being a conservative. The Democrat Party hates you because you didn't buy in to their racket and take that nonprofit job that pays you, $20 here, $20 there, just enough to keep your head afloat. Okay, so let me be clear. Government should not, it should serve the people. Scripture tells us in Romans 13 that rulers are God's servants for your good. So number one, your leader, if you are a Christian, shame on you for voting for Governor J.B. Pritzker. He is not a professed Christian. You should be putting servants of God, people who boldly profess Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. You should be putting those people in office. That is my number one check. Okay, my number one check is if I vote for someone, do they profess boldly Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior? If they don't, sorry, you don't get my vote. So shame on Christians who vote for Governor J.B. Pritzker. The Bible commands us to put God's people in offices and in government. Okay, so rulers, they are not to abandon the truth. They are not to mock God's design. We are made in the image of God. Babies, those are God's. You cannot take away babies. Okay, those babies are God's, and you cannot take them, and you can't mock them through late-term abortion, taxpayer-funded abortion. Rulers, they can't abandon the truth. They can't mock God's design. They can't promote moral confusion. So this whole push to legalize prostitution here in the state of Illinois, that's moral confusion. So if people promote that, don't vote them in if they want, legalized prostitution. that is a clear sign. Hey, we probably shouldn't vote that guy in. He's promoting moral confusion. The Bible commands us not to put leaders like that in. Don't put leaders in who persecute dissent, but rather uplift dissent and encourage dissent. These people are not legitimate leaders, people who abandon the truth, mock God's design, promote moral confusion, and persecute people who dissent. When Governor J.B. Pritzker uses taxpayer funds to champion abortion, silence parents in schools, and elevate sexual identity politics above common sense morality, he's no longer governing, he's preaching a false gospel from the Capitol steps. Okay, so he's not governing. He is pushing an agenda. Really, it's a false gospel, false doctrine. So Pritzker's story that he wants to protect may sound inspiring in a press release, but it's bankrupt in the light of truth. Okay, so this is not inspired. We have to protect our story. What the hell does that even mean? I want to play this. Let's take a listen here. Here we go.
Governor, young people are still leaving the state. The new census data shows we're losing 18 and under faster than any other state. Is there a policy change you can?
Actually, the latest data shows Illinois gaining population. You ought to look at that. Maybe
But
you're picking
18 and under.
I hear you, but you've got to look at all the data and understand that when you're trying to attract, remember, every state has people who leave and come. The point is to get net improvement in population. And that's something that we proved at the census in 2020 that we were doing. As you may recall, in 2010, every year after 2010, the community survey, the survey that the Census Bureau does every year, which is not a census, was showing that Illinois was losing population. Then we actually counted heads in 2020. And when they did the full post-enumeration survey to determine what the population of Illinois is, we gained 250,000 people in the state, didn't lose people. So we got to keep moving in that direction.
He just keeps taxing and spending. And there, you wonder, is there any tomorrow? Well, yes, there will be. Under Republican leadership, you will find responsible control of government and getting government out of the lives of ordinary families. And that's what the difference between a Republican and Democrat. Democrats believe there's a government solution to every crisis or every problem. They even create the crisis in order to find a way to meddle into the affairs of a family and a business. And enough is enough. 8 years of Pritzker, 8 years of this Democrat-controlled House and Senate, enough is enough. So give those Republicans a chance.
The new census data shows Illinois is losing young people, 18 and under, faster than any other state. Is it time to try policies that maybe might make things less expensive for young people?
Well, we're doing that already. I mean, when I think about erasing medical debt, when I think about making college more affordable, when I think about the pathways to the trades and jobs, community college, even childcare, and making that more accessible, those are things that Governor Pritzker and I have delivered on here in Illinois.
We are number one in the state of losing our young, the 18 unders. And for those up to age 65, we have lost hundreds of thousands in the last 4 years of people 65 and under, the working people of Illinois. And why? Because they're taxed out of their homes with their property tax. They're taxed out of their businesses. Businesses are shuttering down around the state. Major corporations and businesses that rely on those have shuttered up and to move to more tax-friendly states. And with them go families and jobs to better climate. So this is the Pritzker legacy.
Okay, so I wanted to play that for you. We are going to get to the high gas taxes, but I do want to get to the U.S. Census data confirming that we already know that Illinois is bleeding its next generation. So we have the fastest decline under 18 in this country. So what does that mean? Kids, as soon as they graduate college, they're leaving the state. Sixth fastest loss of working age adults between 19 and 64. So families are voting with their feet, and they are headed for the exits. Okay, so you can't raise a future when the future is getting the hell out of Dodge. Okay, you can't you have no future when the future is leaving. Okay, so you can't build a tax base when your kids don't want to raise their families here. You certainly can't pretend you're pro-family state when your own young people would rather risk tornadoes in Oklahoma than tyranny in Illinois. Okay, so when asked about the data, you heard that there, Governor J.B. Pritzker brushed it off, saying that the state gains and loses people, and you have to look at the net. Okay, so he's going to try to massage these numbers and make it appear not as bad as it really is. The old political dodge, that one, that's what that was. When in doubt, just kind of dodge the question and don't look at the numbers. Look at this shiny thing over here instead. Look at what I'm saying. And the fact is, Illinois has gained some folks in the last couple of years since 2020. They're not citizens, though. They're illegal immigrants. We have gained folks since 2020. And it's all illegal immigrants since 2021, I'd say. And we've lost our youth, our workers, people who would actually contribute and be part of that tax base. And it's really scary when you think about it, because we have no future here in the state of Illinois if everybody's leaving. So let's break it down. Why are kids and families fleeing? High taxes on parents, future homeowners, they're leaving to colleges that are affordable. One thing that I've always said that Illinois ought to do is offer out-of-state tuition, make it an in-state tuition price for out-of-staters. So just get rid of the out-of-state price and, have people come to college here for the in-state price. That would, I think, be a great incentive. But of course, they don't want to do that, because then how are the professors and the elitists going to get all their money from, these public universities? One, taxation, two, tuition. So God forbid we cut tuition costs for students. And these out-of-staters who would want to come to Illinois for school, which might be a barrier. They might say, I'm going to stay in Indiana. I really like this school in Illinois, and I really like this school, but it's just too costly for me because of the out-of-state tuition. Beggars can't be choosers, right? We need to bring that down, and we need to bring it down to the in-state tuition, and we need to cut the salaries of some of these elitists in these universities. There's no reason for them to be making $300,000. The president doesn't even make that much. Well, $400,000, but there's no reason that those professors should be making that much. And the anti-family education policies, they know that if they send their kids to Illinois public schools, that they are going to come out gay unicorns, and nobody wants to raise their kids up in that. I don't want my kid to come out a gay unicorn, or a cat. People are afraid to send their kids to the public school system because next week they might come home and they might say, Mom, I actually think that I'm a cat. No. So there's also a lack of freedom. Small business, the regulation, landlords, they really see a lot of red tape. Here in the state of Illinois, you can't even demand. So usually in an apartment, what winds up happening is your landlord will say, hey, you have to pay me through this payment portal. Okay, so there's a payment portal that's set up, and you have to pay me through the payment portal. A lot of landlords were doing this. They outlawed that. You have to allow people to pay you via check, okay, which is just a dinosaur and not really a great option for landlords because checks bounce, right? So you have to either accept check or Venmo, and Venmo is a little iffy as well, because you might have the money and then all of a sudden when the payment processes, you don't have the money in your Venmo account. So yeah, they're mandating landlords to take certain forms of payment, and that is just ridiculous. As a business owner, as a landlord, you should be able to, and if you don't like that, if it doesn't work for you to use the payment portal for whatever reason, if you're a tenant, then go find somewhere else to live. I mean, I don't know what's so freaking hard about this. Like, go find somewhere else to live if you're that pissed off about it. So Chicago crime bleeding into the rest of the state. There's many reasons. There's a lack of freedom in businesses, small businesses, landlords. And then I do want to talk about this, the cost of living. Don't even get me started on that. If you're a Christian family and you're raising kids in Illinois, I know you've been asked to pay for public schools, and you've been asked to pay for public schools that won't protect girls in locker rooms, and they teach radical gender ideology. They have "This Book is Gay" as part of the reading assignments, and it doesn't matter if you're in Chicago, Bloomington, or Hayworth, Illinois. We know that Hayworth, Illinois, she had to involuntarily resign. This woman, Sarah Bonner, and she had like all kinds of gay books on her reading assignment. She even had a pornography film called Money Shot as part of her reading assignments, her Monday morning reading assignments. Like, total garbage. Okay. And then you punish the parents. Here's another thing. You punish the parents who push back. Like, who the hell would want to stick around for that nonsense? And the cost of living. Don't get me even started on that. Juliana Stratton, you heard her there in that clip. She wants to replace Dickie Durbin in the U.S. Senate. She probably will win. Who knows? Because, like I said, the unsubsidized poor, they have been duped by the Democrat Party, and it's so sad to see them. They are little foot soldiers in these nonprofit organizations, and they get just little spurts of money, to keep them quiet and to keep them voting. And I don't know, she might just get it. I don't know. We'll see. But Pritzker hasn't announced his running mate yet. I don't know who it's going to be. It might be Alexei Janulius, which means that somebody would have to be the Secretary of State. But I don't know. They seem like best buds for some odd reason. Alexei Janulius, I don't know why. It just feels like they are joined at the hip. JB and Alexei Janulius. But we'll have to see. I don't know who it could be. His running mate. Throw it in the comment section if you've got ideas of who his running mate could be. But Juliana Stratton, she was there and she was talking and bragging about the Pritzker administration's efforts for young people. She says, erasing medical debt, affordable college, childcare access. So it sounds all nice, but what about life? What about freedom? What about opportunity? What about letting families choose how to raise their kids and educate their kids without the state living inside their living rooms? And they're trying to come after homeschooling now. And we saw that didn't work out this last legislative session. But we have a state that is no longer, I call it Pritzkerstan. This is no longer a state of the United States, but we have a rogue governor who has gotten a taste of tyranny, and he loves it. He loves it. He works his own global trade deals. He tries to sanction other countries. He works out deals with the CCP-backed companies like Goshen. And the left throws your money at symptoms, and they ignore the spiritual cancer that is spreading in our culture. Pritzker's crew thinks that government is the answer to everything. The answer to everything when government... The truth is that government is the reason why families are leaving. That's really wise. It's interesting. The more the government gets involved, and I talked about this yesterday, the show's archive, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. I talked about how the more the government says, well, we need more affordable healthcare. The reason why your aspirin costs, like one aspirin at the hospital costs $12 is because it is heavily subsidized industry. The healthcare industry is very subsidized, and they know that they can take advantage of the taxpayer, and they can set these prices because there's things like Medicaid and Medicare that will take care of it, or there's employer mandates. So now in the state of Illinois, there's employer mandates. If you provide health care to your employees, and if you pay for that, there's mandates that you have to follow here in the state of Illinois, and it just keeps getting more expensive because what the healthcare industry does, they say, oh, well, we know the money's coming in from here, XYZ, so we're going to increase our prices because we know the money's coming. Okay, and that is why the prices are so high. So every single time, I think it's hilarious, government says, oh, we're going to do affordable, erasing medical debt, we're going to do affordable care. Every time they say things like that, it just gets higher. Affordable college. it just gets higher. So Kathy Selvey, who you heard in that clip, she said it pretty plainly that the Democrat supermajority is driving families out. Major corporations and families are fleeing to tax-friendly states, and that is Pritzker's legacy. And what he's trying to do is protect his story, his legacy. So you want to fix Illinois, we need to start with less government, not more. We need to cut taxes, let churches and families and communities lead again. Okay, there's no and give parents school choice. Okay, let kids dream of owning their own property without having to have a $200,000 salary in order to survive the property taxation. I mean, we need to pull government out of it. Republicans, I get it, their vision isn't perfect, but it's at least aligned with freedom and not control. Okay, and right now that is what Illinois is starving for. It's just freedom. So let's look at this, a biblical lens. We like to do this here on the show. Smash the like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe. In Psalm 127, children are called a heritage from the Lord, like arrows in the hand of a warrior. So in Illinois, we don't treat children like they're a blessing, but a burden. We promote things like taxpayer-funded abortion. We don't defend the innocence of our youth. We confuse them sexually at a very early age. And there is no moral foundation. If there is a moral foundation, or if homeschool parents want to keep that moral foundation and not send their kids to public school for it to be corroded or corrupted or torn down, those homeschool parents are then treated like the abuser. And the state is driving away its children. The state is driving away young families, and these families are trying to raise their children up in truth. And if you try to raise your child up in truth, you are judged by the left, and you will be condemned by the left and targeted by the left in this state. So Pritzker is running for a third term. Stratton wants to be a senator. They're not hiding what they believe. Governor J.B. Pritzker went out there, his typical fire and brimstone speech, and all of the buzzwords: LGBTQ, black, brown, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, right? His typical buzzwords. And really what he's doing identity politics bingo card. He's dusting that off, and he's using the identity politics to get him elected, because he knows that there is this faction within Illinois, and it's a large faction of people who are the subsidized poor. And they are subsidized through grants, through these nonprofit organizations. And the 2026 election is not just about changing names of who is going to be in that office. It's about changing direction. We need leaders who love freedom more than government control, who see our children as souls, okay, and see human beings as souls, not statistics to manage. We need somebody who believes that we are God's design, and God's design is not up for negotiation. You need a godly person in the office, in the governor's office. So I pray for Illinois' future. If you care about Illinois' future, don't just complain. Run for governor. If you are a godly man, run for governor, because there aren't any good contenders right now. So I will say that I don't think that there's any good contenders that have entered the race that would defeat Governor J.B. Pritzker. I hope that Darren LaHood gets in. All right, let's get to a few other things this morning. I want to get to the gas tax going up to 48.3 cents a gallon. This was voted on by not only Democrats, the supermajority, but also signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, but also 20 Republicans in the state house. 2019 voted for this motor fuel tax. And what's really scary about this whole motor fuel tax is, one, Republicans voted for it. Two, they adjust it for inflation every year. So they don't even come back to the table to talk about inflation or to talk about the gas tax. They just automatically, via inflation, raise your gas tax every single year come July 1st. So I'm going to be right back. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Welcome to Conservative Cat Clips, where we deal with the truth, not talking points. I'm your host, Kat, and today we're putting a spotlight on something the abortion industry wants to keep you in the dark about: abortion pills. What are they? How do they work? And how are they hurting women? Let's talk about the facts. Over 54% of abortions in America are now done using chemical abortion pills. That number is climbing fast. Why? Because it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's quieter. But here's what they won't tell you. Abortion pills come with a serious risk. The process is two drugs: mifepristone, which actually ends the pregnancy, and misoprostol, which forces the body to expel the baby. Sounds simple, right? It's not. According to the FDA, 4,200 serious adverse events have been reported, including 28 deaths since 2000, the year 2000. And those are just the official numbers. In 2021, there was a peer-reviewed study that found that ER visits after chemical abortions increased by over 500% between 2002 and 2015. And here's the kicker. Many of these cases are coded as miscarriages, and they're coded as miscarriages because women don't, or they can't, tell the hospital what actually happened and that they actually took these pills. That means the real damage, probably much worse. So way more than 4,200 adverse events since 2000. Now brace yourself. The Biden administration made it to where these pills were accessible by the mail with no person exam, no ultrasound, and no guarantee that the pregnancy had to be an ectopic pregnancy. So, I mean, you could be taking these in your 6 months, 7 months, 8 months along. And it's not, this could be deadly if you take it when it's not an ectopic pregnancy. Women are being told to take these powerful drugs and there's zero medical supervision. That's not healthcare. It's called negligence. It's medical negligence. And we're seeing heartbreaking stories about all these women who are bleeding alone in dorm rooms, bathrooms, parking lots, or even in their own cars in the parking lot. Clinics like Planned Parenthood calls this empowerment and empowering, but tell me how it's empowering to hand a teenager a handful of pills and say, good luck. The emotional fallout is just as real, by the way. There's a physical risk, but there's an emotional risk as well. Women reported feeling abandoned, traumatized, and even haunted by what they've done, especially when they see the tiny, tiny body of their baby passing and passing that. It's traumatizing, and nobody tells them that they're going to see the tiny baby in the pamphlet. So here's the truth, the plain and simple truth. Abortion pills are not safe. They're not kind, and they're not empowering. They actually hurt women, and they silence their pain by taking these chemical abortion pills, and they protect an industry by keeping the abortion in the dark. And it doesn't do anything to protect the individual at all. I'm Kat, and this has been Conservative Clips, Cat Clips, reminding you that real healthcare, it doesn't kill people, and real healthcare means empowering women and supporting women, not selling them lies in a bottle. Stay alert, stay bold, and always choose light. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. They say death and taxes are inevitable, but in Illinois, it starts to feel like when you get taxed, it's just breathing. Taxation is just a way of life now here in the state of Illinois. I'm Conservative Cat. We shred through the lies, declaw the corruption, and we defend American families, one truth at a time. Let's look at this gas tax hike. So it's going to increase come July 1st, and this is proof that Illinois is being mismanaged and that you're being abused. On July 1st, Illinois drivers are going to be hit with a gas tax increase, rising to 48.3 cents per gallon. That's up 1.3 cents from last year. And don't forget, it's not just the state gas tax, okay? Pile on county taxes, local taxes. There's environmental fees that you pay. Go take a look at your gas tax receipt. A lot of consumers don't realize how much in fees and taxes they're paying when they actually pay for a gallon of gas. So suddenly Illinois is only second to California when it comes to paying at the pump. Okay, the cost at the pump. We are second in the nation for the worst prices. So not Texas, not Florida, not even New York, California. Okay, we're second behind that state. And that's the company we're keeping now, California. California, we're compared to that state. It's really bad. So Dylan Sharkey from the Illinois Policy Institute says Illinois collects $6 billion a year from transportation fees. That's your tolls, that's your gas taxes, all of that. But the roads aren't improving. Okay, all of that is supposed to go towards the roads. The roads haven't improved. Actually, the U.S. Department of Transportation, they do a road quality survey, and they do it based on a percentage, and they deem states acceptable or not acceptable. And Illinois has not improved in our road percentage in 6 or 7 years or so. Okay, so the U.S. Department of Transportation has given us bad grades for our roads, despite us having $6 billion and nothing to show for it. And it's not just misfortune, that's malfeasance. Where is the money going? Is it going to consultants, to union buddies, to these unions, and they don't actually get the job done? Where is the money going? Pet projects in Chicago. Somebody's getting rich, and it's definitely not you. It's not the guy filling his truck up in Tazewell County. It's not that guy. So who's getting rich? So meanwhile, border towns like Rock Island, East St. Louis, they are losing business. So it's really hard to be a gas station in those areas because folks will just cross over to Iowa, to Missouri, and they'll fill up and do their shopping, all their stuff in other states. So we're losing out on that tax revenue as well, because the sales tax revenue, the gas tax revenue, we're losing out on that because people have realized, it's cheaper for me to just go border hop to the state over and fill up and do my shopping there. You want a little tobacco, case of soda, full tank of gas. Good luck affording it in the state of Illinois. You better drive 10 minutes across state lines and pay a normal price. So that is what people have been doing. So we're losing out on all that taxation if they just don't outright move. A lot of people are just outright moving. There's an out-migration crisis here in the state. So let's clear this up. These taxes get passed directly onto you. Okay, this is the consumer who pays these taxes. Whether you buy gas from a mom and pop shop or a mega chain, the extra cents hit your wallet directly, not theirs. Okay, so Nate Harris in the Center Square, head of the Illinois Fuel and Retail Association, says, quote, "These taxes are passed directly onto the consumer." Translation, you're the piggy bank. You, the farmer, the delivery guy, the soccer mom, the business owner, you are the piggy bank. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you drive, you pay. You pay. And you drive a pickup truck, you run a small business, you are being robbed blind. So imagine, a landscaper who has to use quite a bit of gas. Sorry, we're live. Smash that like button, subscribe. You have to buy a ton of gas and you are being robbed. If the money was being used efficiently, we wouldn't be having this debate, okay? But the money's not being used efficiently. The $6 billion that's sitting in the road fund, that's not going to fix our infrastructure. And they're not fixing our infrastructure because I-80, that bridge, the I-80 bridge, it is a nightmare. Most of our bridges in the state of Illinois are crumbling. So this is a scam. Your tax money, you've got your tax money taken out of your wallet, and what, you see a few orange cones pop up. Maybe Governor J.B. Pritzker does a press release or a presser, and they say, we're going to fix this bridge. And the orange cones are still up, and they say, we're rebuilding Illinois. Well, Illinois hasn't been rebuilt, and the U.S. Department of Transportation has continued to give us failing percentages for the past 6 years. They haven't improved. So you're driving the roads. The potholes are insane, especially in our rural communities, because the pet projects in Chicago, they get done. The nice roads for, these district or these Democrat-run districts. Chris Welch's district, they get a brand new sports complex, a $40 million sports complex for the school district. And Somebody actually brought this up in the comment section. I'm glad that you did. Gas taxes in Illinois are too high. What about the electric vehicles? Okay, so that's another thing, is what is their solution going to be? Say electric vehicles become dominant, which I don't think that they will. They are going to start, and here's what's going to wind up happening. They aren't going to get rid of the gas tax in exchange for this tax. It is a mileage tax, a vehicle mileage tax. So they're going to charge you both. Okay, they're not going to get rid of the gas tax. They're going to charge you a vehicle mileage tax, and then they're going to charge you a gas tax, because they're not going to take a tax away. Has Illinois ever done that? They're going to track how far you drive, how many miles you go, and then they're going to tax you by the mile. Okay, so this is next level insanity. Taxing the gas is pretty bad, but also tracking you via GPS and taxing you on how many miles you drive. This is Big Brother in a Prius, okay? You can't make this stuff up. That is creepy, number one, to have somebody figuring out, how much taxes you should pay based on how long you drive. How are they going to figure that out? I'd imagine GPS capability. I don't know. It's weird. And they're not going to take away the gas tax in exchange. So to answer your question, Rita, how do electric vehicles don't pay? They don't pay that tax. But they are looking into a mileage tax, and I could see the electric vehicles paying that. But that they won't take away the gas taxes. We're going to probably have to pay double taxes, those of us who drive gas-powered vehicles. So let's take a step back. What does Scripture say about all of this? Luke 3:14, when soldiers asked John the Baptist what repentance looks like, he says, "Do not extort money from anyone. Be content with your wages." So that's not what's happening in Illinois government right now. And what's happening in Illinois government is extortion. They're taxing working families under the false promise of repairs that never happen. Orange cones pop up. They might, fill a couple of holes that come back the next year or a couple of years later. That's not stewardship. It is a betrayal of public trust. Jesus flipped tables over corruption in the temple. Imagine what he'd do in Springfield. Imagine what Jesus would do if he was in Springfield, Illinois. Government is supposed to be servants. They're not supposed to be predators. Romans 13, like I say, rulers are to be a terror to evil works and not a terror to taxpayers, okay? They are supposed to be adversarial with evil, and really they seem adversarial with you and I, the taxpayer. So Illinois is dying from self-inflicted wounds, the outmigration, the high taxes driving people out, shrinking our consumer base, which means no tax base or no taxes from sales tax. We're shrinking the consumer base. And we're kind of in a death spiral right now, because outmigration just increases the cost for everybody else who stays. Okay, so we are in a death spiral. It's only going to get worse. So the people who leave, the people typically on fixed incomes, they can't stay here because the taxation is so bad. You got your single moms, they can't stay because it's too bad. And they're all leaving, and the people who are left behind, we continue to pay those taxes, and we are going to get taxed more and more to make up for the consumer base that has left. So the goal is to punish the working class, obviously, and they want to reward bureaucracy. And I think that their mission has been accomplished, because that is their goal. And I think that they've accomplished their mission, which is to crush the working class and reward bureaucracy. And don't forget the people who are in the public sector, by the way, people like your teachers, your public sector unions, all those people who are paid with taxpayer cash, and the nonprofit sector, who also gets taxpayer cash in the form of grants. And don't forget the 20 Republicans and the 3 Republicans in the Senate. So there were 20 Republicans who voted this in the House in 2019, including former state representative, current Bloomington mayor, Dan Brady. So this isn't just a Democrat problem. This is a uniparty problem. They love taxing you. They love it. Illinois doesn't need another task force. It needs turnover. We need to vote these people, these gas hike grifters, out. We need to vote them out, and we need to elect men who respect the people they serve and cut the fat and fix the roads and stop punishing the families who are driving to work. Enough is enough. I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to get to Jamal Bowman. So get this. This disgraced Democrat congressman, he makes this really bizarre claim that the N-word is causing cancer and diabetes in the Black community. I'm going to be right back with that. Don't miss it. Hold on just 1 second. You're listening to Conservative Cat Clips, where we dig up the truth and we serve it all with a snarl. I'm your host, Cat, and today we are turning our claws on the man who ran Illinois like it was his personal little kingdom for nearly half a century. That's Michael J. Madigan, the Velvet Hammer. Soft-spoken on camera, but was a heavy-fisted, hard-fisted guy when it came to the backroom deals. He was slippery as an eel when the feds came knocking on his door. So let's get into the history. Michael Madigan was elected to the Illinois House way back in 1971 and became a speaker in 1983, holding that position for a very, very long time, longer than most marriages. Okay, most marriages don't last as long as he was speaker. He was the longest ever serving legislative speaker in American history, by the way. So he also chaired the Illinois Democratic Party, making him the most powerful political operator probably in the country. And folks, this wasn't because he was loved, it was because he was feared. Michael Madigan, his power came from three key tools. Let's get into them. Total control over the legislative maps through gerrymandering. Okay, then he also had a tight grip on campaigns funds. If you wanted to win as a Democrat, you needed Madigan's money. He also had a personal side hustle. It was a law firm called Madigan and Getzendanner. And this was actually a law firm in property tax appeals, often the very business affected by his legislation he passed. So this is very interesting. So he kept his control using these three key tools. Now, a turning point in July of 2020, federal prosecutors dropped a political nuke on this guy. ComEd, Illinois' largest electric utility, pretty much admitted to a nearly decade-long bribery scheme to curry favor with Michael Madigan. Okay, so in 2011 to 2019, from ComEd, what they did, they handed out jobs, internships, contracts, and payments to Michael Madigan's political cronies in exchange for favorable legislation. Okay, that's what ComEd did. Now, legislation like rate hikes, regulatory breaks, all of that, favorable legislation for ComEd, and they were essentially bribed. ComEd paid over $1.3 million in bribes, helping Madigan solidify his empire, while electricity bills went up for working families. Okay, so by March of 2022, the hammer dropped. Okay, so Madigan was indicted on 22 counts, including racketeering, bribery, wire fraud, and extortion. Prosecutors described as a criminal enterprise where legislation was for sale and loyalty was purchased with jobs and perks. Okay, so his top lieutenant, Michael McLean, was already charged and is now facing trial alongside him. Even ComEd CEO at the time was indicted. It was a full-blown political mob trial, and Madigan was at the tippity top of the pyramid. Okay, so let's talk consequences. Well, Madigan's political machine made millions. Illinois sank. We became the highest tax state in the Midwest. We racked up $130 billion, over $130 billion. I think it's more like 143 in unfunded pension liability, and it's continuing to climb. Chicago lost residents, businesses, credibility. And who helped prop it all up? Look no further than Governor J.B. Pritzker, who signed off on Madigan's budgets and stayed silent for years, even when the corruption smoke turned into a federal fire. Okay, so to be blunt, Michael Madigan, he didn't just run Illinois, he ran it into the ground. And I just want to be clear, Governor J.B. Pritzker is not blameless in this. He signed off on Madigan's budgets. This is Kat, and you've been listening to Conservative Cat Clips. Remember this, Michael Madigan may finally face justice in court. He might finally get a sentencing. Who knows? But the machine he's built still grinds on, greased with taxpayer money, corrupt contracts, and weak-willed politicians. It's time we stop treating corruption like a tradition here in the state of Illinois, and we start treating it like the felony it is. Because if we don't, Illinois will be run by the same snakes, just different suits. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat. I appreciate you being here. In just a couple of minutes, I will take your questions. I'll do a Q&A here after I do the Jamal Bowman ties to, he says that there's ties to cancer and diabetes and the use of the N-word. So he has this insane claim that the N-word causes cancer and diabetes in the Black community. So let's get to the disgraced congressman. I've looked for, every piece of scientific literature, and I've looked through all the medical research available, and I have yet to find the slightest bit of evidence and slightest bit of correlation between the use of the N-word and increased heart disease and obesity among Black Americans. I've checked all the medical research, haven't been able to find anything. What's super confusing is that Jamal Bowman chose to blame the majority of the American population for health disparities that are considered preventable. Okay, so these are considered preventable, by the way. Heart disease, maybe not so much cancer, but heart disease and obesity. He said cancer, heart disease, and obesity, these can be attributed to the use of the N-word. And he blamed half the American population for these health disparities in the Black community. And a lot of these health disparities can be prevented. Obesity, heart disease, a lot of that can be prevented. Even cancer, I'd say that something that prevents cancer would be fasting. Now, Jamal Bowman, he has a lot of foolish takes, okay, but this one really takes the cake to me. He claims that there's a correlation between the N-word and higher rates of obesity and heart disease in the Black community. And I don't understand. If that was true, why isn't it true? You know what I mean? Where is the scientific research? Where is the medical research? This hasn't been proven. Surely Black rappers wouldn't want to increase preventable health diseases among their fans. Okay, Black rappers, they use that word all of the time, the N-word. So I think every single rap song has that word in it. Let's take a listen to Jamal Bowman right here.
Dealing with America's original sin and its disease of hate and racism towards Black and brown people and sexism towards women and anti-LGBTQ sentiment. We are not dealing with that. Your colleagues in the Republican Party do not hold each other accountable when it comes to the racism that comes from the party on a consistent basis.
Congressman, I mean, where are you on?
You can't be calm about this. I'm a Black man in America. The reason why heart disease...
I'm white, I can't comment.
Listen to what I'm saying. The reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity and diabetes are bigger in the Black community is because of the stress we carry from having to deal with being called the N-word directly or indirectly every day. If your colleagues would listen and try to learn and engage and grow and stop being so hateful, we could have a better country.
Jamal,
but unfortunately, we're still here.
Jamal, it's coming from one.
Jamal, I feel your passion and I understand where you're coming from. Sincerely, I really, really do. It happens on both sides, Jamal. You might think it happens more on your side, Jamal. When I leave the show, Jamal, you should see my Twitter feed.
And they're acquitted. Rodney King, Abner Louima, Eric Gardner, Trayvon Martin, Black cops in Memphis. It's not the same. And I don't want to qualify or quantify pain. That's not what I'm talking about. Everyone goes through pain. But the racism in this country is a disease that will destroy us. And it's destroying us right now as we speak. January 6th, everybody was pardoned. Everybody's pardoned. Riots in LA, they're insurrectionists. But we pardoned everyone January 6th.
So, Congressman,
this is America.
I was evacuated.
Okay. Well, I didn't know somebody could be so naive yet so passionate at the same time. He really did just bring up Rodney King. What? He also brought up January 6th. Of course, he brought up January 6th because, of course, he did. It's Jamal Bowman, and he's a radical Democrat, disgraced congressman, by the way. How many times must America acknowledge this sin? And why does he act like the United States is the country that created slavery and like we were the first ones to do slavery? We weren't, okay? And I think if I didn't know any better, I think he's trying to imply that America's invented and Americans invented slavery. We didn't invent slavery. Anyone with a fraction of the brain understands that. And slavery still goes on today. What about human trafficking, sex slavery? Slavery of Black Americans just not happening. So this is pretty comical. He blames Republicans for racism, and he talks about this original sin, and the Democrats continue to shed the blame on everyone else. Although the Democrats, they were the one who's like they literally they were the ones who fought for slavery and fought to keep slavery. Okay, so he's blaming Republicans for their racism. No. You're the ones who fought a war to keep slavery in place. The Democrat Party did. And then they cast this blame, this original sin of slavery, right, which isn't the original sin. And Americans didn't invent it. Okay, slavery was a thing far before America became a country. And I mean, maybe, just maybe, he should be blaming the Democrat Party. He should blame the party that fought the war to keep it. And maybe he shouldn't be blaming the Republicans who fought the war to end slavery. He's blaming Republicans for racism. They've never been they also didn't filibuster the Civil Rights Act. Jim Crow, all of that was the Democrat Party. Robert Byrd, he's a senator. You guys know that guy. He was a KKK recruiter. Maybe you should be going after the Democrat Party for their racism, and they continue to be racist today through subsidized welfare programs. And welfare programs, they are the new slavery. Okay, and it's great that Jamal has finally figured out a cure to this heart disease and obesity, I guess. Don't say the N-word. Maybe we need to make sure these rappers stop saying the N-words in their songs if that's what's contributing to obesity and heart disease. We need to get the rappers to stop singing that in their songs, I suppose, because a lot of their listeners are being exposed to that reason for their heart disease, I guess. Republicans, at the end of the day, they hold themselves accountable to God, and they got to get off this fixation of slavery. They really do. Like, the Democrats have to get off this fixation, and the Republicans were the ones who ended it. It was a Republican president with the Emancipation Proclamation. They won't tell you to celebrate that, though. They'll tell you to celebrate something totally insignificant about the end of slavery, which is Juneteenth, just to make sure we don't shine a light that the Republicans were actually the ones who ended slavery. So until then, we can only hope that rappers stop, using the N-word to fix America's original sin. All right. I'm going to head out, but you guys have a blessed rest of your day. I appreciate what a BSer. Try a diet. Yeah, this is all like preventable. Heart disease is preventable. Arguably cancer is preventable. Fasting. I think there's a lot of research that can be looked at as far as cancer. And if you do fasting, things like that, that can help prevent things like cancer, eating right, all that stuff. All of this is preventable. And I mean, what? The N-word is what attributes what you're going to attribute to obesity in the Black community? Are you serious? And what bothers me so much about it is that the Republican Party has never done anything racist in their entire lives, like in their entire existence, from Abraham Lincoln to ending slavery to Donald Trump, trying to create a space of equal opportunity for Black Americans. Taxation, lowering taxes, child tax credits. There's things that Donald Trump has done, huge things that Donald Trump has done for the Black community. So I don't know where they're getting this whole like racist thing. That the Republicans are racist. They've never been racist in all of human history or in all of American history. Lyndon Baines Johnson was the one said, I'm going to get those N-words to vote Democrat for the rest of their lives. And then he did the whole war on poverty thing in the 1960s and got them to the Black community to not rely on family, but rather single parents to rely on the government. And really, the new slavery is welfare programs. They give you just enough, and then they tell you to vote for them. And I don't know about you, but that's not freedom. All right, you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much. We'll be back on Monday morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Don't miss my special Saturday show. We do a Saturday show now. We give you a ton of content. We go live 2 hours in the morning. Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday we go live for about an hour. So I'll see you tomorrow, and be sure to subscribe and share this out with your friends. Bye-bye.